Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pixel and welcome to the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel. Today we have our third and final video looking at the performance of Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War's multiplayer beta, and this time we're going to be checking out the game running on our SAPPHIRE Nitro RX 5700 XT graphics card, again at both maximum and competitive settings, but this time at a 1440p resolution. We've already released videos looking at the performance of our Nitro RX 5500 XT and Pulse RX 5600 XT. I will leave links to those videos in the description down below, as well as in a card that should be on screen now, so be sure to check those out if you get the chance. Now, before we get started, I want to quickly mention that there is a good chance that you're going to notice a fair amount of screen tearing in this video. This is due to us recording our gameplay using an external capture card. We record our footage this way in order to avoid the performance penalty associated with recording via software. Providing that you played the game using a form of sync, you shouldn't need to worry about said screen tearing. Right, so with that out of the way, let's have a gander at our performance while playing at the game's maximum settings. On the more traditional game modes, we found that we'd bounce between around 90 and 120 FPS on average. Just like the other GPUs that we tested, performance could vary greatly depending on the map. Interestingly, however, we did find that the performance did not always scale as expected when jumping from 1080p to a 1440p resolution. What I mean by this is that the maps that performed the best at 1080p didn't necessarily perform the best at 1440. For instance, we found Miami to be very heavy at 1080p but scaled well to 1440p, whereas Cartel struggled much more at 1440p than it did at 1080p. Don't get me wrong, performance across the board is pretty solid, especially considering that this is still beta. I just found the difference to be an interesting observation. The move over to these larger game modes once again showed around a 10 to 15% reduction to average frame rates, which is in line with what we expected. It's also worth noting that performance on these modes is generally much less variable, which leaves the door open for a strategic frame rate cap for anybody that's running a high refresh rate FreeSync compatible monitor. Again, just like with the cards previously tested, we never had to contend with any of the stuttering that many people were reporting, and in general the game was running great. Overall, I have to say that the Nitro RX 5700 XT is able to offer a great gameplay experience while maxed out at 1440p, and you'll likely be able to hold very close to a 120 FPS minimum if you was to drop down to 1080p. That said, I would personally recommend that you stick with 1440p if you're given the option, as this is one of those games that really benefits from the increased resolution, not only in terms of how pretty it looks, but also in terms of enemy visibility. Now, let's take a look at some gameplay recorded at what I consider to be this game's competitive settings. Once again, if you've watched the two previous videos, I do apologise for the repetition here. Normally, when trying to get a competitive advantage, we'd basically just minimise as much as possible in order to maximise our frame rates. However, much like last year's Modern Warfare, Black Ops Cold War has a bit of an issue in terms of visibility. Bearing this in mind, we've either minimised or completely disabled every setting other than texture quality, anti-aliasing, and object view distance. Oh, and we've also kept the render resolution at 100% of 1440p. Both texture quality and object view distance are set to high, whereas anti-aliasing has been set to medium. The reason why we've kept some AA is simply because the raw image that this game pumps out can be incredibly noisy and filled with all sorts of shimmering, making it, at times, very difficult to discern distant detail. Object view distance, on the other hand, is all about minimising popping. On the larger maps, particularly those that contain a lot of foliage, popping can be incredibly distracting. The Call of Duty franchise has always had its fair share of camping and head peeking, but as the maps have gotten larger and more complex, these playstyles have only risen in popularity. This means that if you're going to be running around in the open, you're going to want to be constantly scanning for movement, and when you've got objects popping in and out all over the place, it's all too easy to mistake popping for an enemy, or even worse, ignore an enemy on the assumption that it was just popping. When it comes to texture quality, it's more of a personal preference thing really. When set to low, I found that some enemy models would blend in with the backgrounds, whereas when set to high, I was generally better able to locate stationary enemies. Either way, it's not like you're going to see much, if any, difference in performance between the texture settings, so just go with whatever you find to be the most appealing. At these settings, we found that our frame rates, particularly on the more traditional game modes, became extremely variable. This makes it basically impossible for me to say exactly what kind of performance you should be expecting. The good news is that we are definitely looking at an average well above the 120 FPS mark, but we did definitely see a few dips from time to time. Hopefully, with a little bit more optimization from the developers and some driver work from AMD, we could be looking at a pretty solid 99% minimum of around 120 FPS at launch. The larger game modes here offered much the same story as we saw at maximum settings. Performance is generally much less variable and we lose around 10 to 15% on our averages. I know that I sound like a broken record when I say this, but I'd really want to be playing on a FreeSync compatible monitor at these sorts of frame rates. In conclusion, I have to say that the jump from 1080p to 1440p made a much bigger difference than I was expecting. Not only did the game look much nicer, but visibility was also greatly improved, and all in all, I'm very excited to see what a little more optimization work and some game ready drivers is going to do for our performance at launch. Once again, I need to make it clear that all the gameplay in this video was recorded during a beta, and so performance at launch may very well vary. But with all that said, that is once again going to be me done for today, so thank you so much for watching. If you are new around here, please consider slapping that subscribe button and dinging that bell so you get notified of all of our future uploads. You can leave us any questions, suggestions or feedback down in the comment section below, and if you like this video then leaving us a like would also be greatly appreciated. For now though, from myself and everybody here at the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel, thank you so much for stopping by, and until next time, we will catch you later. Bye bye.